Uh, Good afternoon, everyone, distinguished guests, esteemed thought leaders, and my dear friends. Please allow me to introduce myself, a colleague to many, a friend to few, a stranger to most at the moment. My name is Benjamin Machu, and I'm the Communications Officer of Bhutan Foundation. Before we commence the 17th session of Bhutan Dialogues, I believe it is imperative that I share a few words. I encountered a piece of prose several years ago. It was titled Spiritual Laws by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And in that prose, the underlying theme was the precedence of thought over action. As simple, even as cliche as that notion sounds, um, I confess, I must confess that I never truly grasped the meaning of what he was saying back then. It was only recently, while preparing for this very event, that the reason finally revealed itself to me. Thought, unlike action, is unhurried. It is deliberate, reflective, and when cultivated with discipline, it is discerning. Action, by contrast, is often reactive or a response to a circumstance rather than a product of convention. And so, when a nation, a philosophy, or indeed a room, when we choose to think before we act, it is not merely observing convention, it is exercising a quite form of wisdom. Bhutan, in charting its own path to development, embodies precisely this principle to deliberate before deciding, to reflect before pursuing, to understand before transforming. It is in this very spirit that Bhutan Dialogues was conceived by our founder. It is an impartial and objective platform for critical discourse among thought leaders and change makers. It is not merely a forum for articulate speech, but a sanctuary for right speech and mindful listening. As we embark upon the 17th session, I invite each of you, speaker and listener alike, to embrace the same discipline, to embrace the precedence of thought before you act. Allow me to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Kombis R. Abdul Rahimi. And the moderator for today's session is our very own Mr. Ngawang Gelson. Thank you and welcome to the 17th session of Bhutan Dialogues.
Like this? Or like this? Great. Thank you everyone for coming to the this session of Bhutan Dialogues. I have no problem being loud. Kombis, do you have any?
No, same.
Yeah, same. I listened to Kombis, during the Bhutan Echoes session, and I found your thoughts on AI particularly interesting. Today, we have a very young crowd in the audience, and we're also going live. So there's going to be a lot of anticipation, especially given the fact that digital finance is one sector industry in Bhutan that is rapidly being recognized as an area of interest in the country. I don't know how many were you. I know you have had a very busy schedule, but if you go to any shops in the country, for example, digital payments, especially after COVID-19, has taken shape in such a way that you Bhutanese don't carry cash anymore. QR code payments, you see that everywhere, right? So
Yeah.
the integration of the financial system and financial inclusion, I personally think has been very successful.
Yeah.
So before we sort of delve into the topic at hand, I'd like you to sort of share about yourself.
Yeah.
They already know who you are, where you work, but a little bit more than what your bio tells us.
Happy to. And let me take this opportunity to thank the Loden Foundation, yourself, and everyone here. It's a great honor to be here. This is my first time visiting Bhutan. I will 100% be back very soon. This is my fourth day here, in the country, and I've just found it incredibly fascinating and not at all what I had expected, and in many ways. And I'm just again very grateful to be here and. A little bit about me, my background. I've worked kind of in the intersection of government, private sector, policy, technology, and also the law as well. I'm also a lawyer by education, and I've spent a good part of my career in the digital finance space. Was one of the earliest, I would say, maybe practitioners of digital assets in the early days.
I see.
So I, was while there were a lot of, I think, a lot of individuals, a lot of countries, a lot of leaders, in the community saying that this was something that was going to be kind of a fad. It was going to disappear. I knew otherwise, and look where we are today. Bhutan, stands at the forefront, I think, of this, what I'd like to call sort of this digital transformation age. You have a lot going for you, I think, as a country, as a nation, a small nation, but what you've been able to accomplish and achieve, and in just these few short years has been nothing but remarkable. And I think really I see from the 4 days that I've been here and talking to young people, and really hearing about kind of and hearing about the His Majesty's vision on from GMC, from the Food Mindful City to what the progress that has been made towards financial inclusion. I think has been remarkable, and it's really a use case for other countries to look at and adopt on their own.
You said something very interesting, which is it was nothing like you expected. So can you sort of enlighten more?
No.
Like, what did you expect?
No.
And like, what were some of the revelations that you
No.
found? You
No.
know, that completely changed your
Yeah.
perspective.
So my knowledge of Bhutan was very limited. I have to say, as an American, I was in law school, and actually one of my classmates, what I knew of Bhutan was actually through one of my classmates who was studying law in the States, and this was maybe about more than 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, and he was actually the Chief Justice here in Bhutan. Yeah, and I do need to reach out to him. I keep saying I'm going to contact him before I leave, but
He's
here's
probably
where we are.
watching
Yeah,
right
that
now,
would be amazing.
getting upset.
That would be amazing if he is. So I kind of lost touch, unfortunately. But what I remember, no, I mean, in terms of my expectations was, it is, a kingdom kind of in the heart of the Himalayas. It's, I would say less, not that many people have traveled there. So it's, much more, I would say, off the beaten path in terms of, where there would be, but in my few days that I've been here, I've been really amazed by how authors and entrepreneurs and people that I've actually worked with in fintech, globally recognized leaders who are here, and they're working, whether they're working in GMC, they're working in a lot of industries here, so it's not as, let's say, I don't want to use the word isolated, but kind of small as, again, the kind of my initial thoughts were. This is small, but I think mighty. I think mighty is the right word. So, but all very positive. I think my interactions with both government and industry and young people, I was impressed. Oh, and another something that I wasn't expecting at all is how everyone speaks English better than, by the way, most Americans speak English. I'm not kidding you. I'm really shocked, how I'm impressed You know, we in America, in the U.S., we generally say, you know, we speak one language and we don't really oftentimes speak it well. And that's, you know, English. But here, I'm impressed that, you know, you speak not only your own language, you speak English, many speak Hindi. Just really blown away by how, you know, so very, very international.
Mm.
So, yeah.
I see. So before we sort of delve deeper into opportunities for Bhutan and
Yeah.
the US perspectives
Yeah.
for digital finance, let's sort of set the bigger picture right now.
Yeah.
What are three things, in your opinion, that we should look out for when it comes to innovation in digital finance? Three things that are on your radar
Three things just,
in
you
the
know,
realm of digital finance, like three developments or
Yeah.
three policies that are there that we should look out for.
Yeah. Okay. From policies to actual innovations, I mean, I can name a few, but I think, you know, and I think we'll probably talk about this, but you know, stable coins being one of them. So really, digital assets. I think inventions and innovations in the digital asset space, I think, is one thing that everyone should be, um, you know, as consumers of a lot of these innovations should look to. I think also, you know, AI as well. I mean, when we're talking about digital finance, a lot of it relies on data, relies on information,
Yes.
and AI is a great tool to really optimize that information. So adding AI onto let's say cryptocurrency or digital assets really is like a game changer. You know, digital identity being another one as well. You know, you have a growing sort of decentralized identity uh, initiative effort here in
Yes.
the kingdom that I think is something to also be aware of. And yeah, I mean, let's those are three, but I mean, there's more. I think just, you know, looking at the payment space.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you mentioned sort of the abundance. So the aftermath of COVID really kind of encouraged us
Yes.
globally to embrace these inventions and innovations that really connect, you know, connect the, how should I say, people with businesses, with governments.
I see.
So that's another one as well.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about stable coins, right? So after last year, after the adoption of the Genius Act, you know, I think I personally see stable coins moving away from, I think the regulatory question is over. Now it's about adoption, right? So do
Yeah.
you see yourself, do you see do you see governments, adopting stable coins? What are the pros and cons? Like, for example, if you look at Bhutan,
Yeah.
our currency is pegged to the Indian rupee, right?
Yeah.
And so every time the US dollar strengthens, it affects us as well. So the US positioning on stable coins, for example, has a huge impact on Bhutan. So how can a country like Bhutan position itself, and is stable coin, an asset that we should also be, investing in?
No, that's a great question. So stable coins, being kind of one of the newer innovations within the digital asset space, are essentially that they're stable, right? So they have a backed by fiat currency, so backed by a nation's currency. So whether that's the dollar, whether that's your local currency, whether that's the euro, whether that's, you know, what other fiat currencies nation backed, right? So it has the protection of the government, of the central bank, of the monetary authority.
Yep.
So in a way, that innovation is, it can be very helpful for countries that are looking to, let's say, do more in cross-border payments, right? So you want to send and receive money to relatives or family or businesses abroad. This is a mechanism, this is a tool, this is a function by way you're able to do that without having to go through all these intermediaries, all these other banks, adds on the costs, adds the complexity, adds the regulations, adds time. And so you kind of benefit from this new financial rail.
Yes.
This new sort of think of it as a new track. A new a new rail that allows for more seamless, faster, cheaper alternative to sort of the traditional mainstream um, rails.
I see.
Yeah.
So should smaller economies like Bhutan embrace stable coins? Should we regulate them cautiously,
Yeah.
or you know?
I think, and I've said this, was it yesterday or the day before, but I was asked this question, Bhutan is a very small country. We have maybe around 700,000 people. How can we compete against these larger countries like the United States, China, larger, bigger countries? And I said, well, look at all of the innovations, look at all of the inventions, in this space, and who has pioneered it, and who has benefited from it. You look at the United Arab Emirates, UAE, small country, smaller than Bhutan, in land size. I know population probably a bit larger, but Estonia in Europe, smaller in both respects.
Yeah.
Switzerland, Singapore, Hong Kong. So what they've done is they've essentially took the best practices of what existed then and compiled it into a framework that would help advance their economy, right? So Bhutan has absolutely a lot going for it, that it could be, the crypto capital of the world. It could be the crypto capital of Asia. It could be the stablecoin, hub for APAC, for the Asia Pacific region. And I think the signals are there, in the sense of, yeah, I can right now go to any establishment here and be able to use the QR code and make that payment. Domestically, I think you've accomplished it, you've achieved it, but I do think there needs to be a policy, maybe from the central bank, from the monetary authority, from a little bit higher up, to basically promote the greater adoption and use cases for digital assets in a way that benefits the economy, that benefits society and the community here.
I see. So just to get more sort of clarity on the U.S. positioning, what are some of the regulatory developments, U.S. policies that are happening right now,
Yeah.
that are shaping the future of digital finance that you could think of?
Yeah, so there's several. So I would say in the last 18 months, there has been a renewed focus on digital assets, but in a way that, whereas previously the U.S. was focused on enforcement first, regulation first, and then the innovation, now it's shifted the focus to innovation first, responsible innovation, but innovation first, and then regulation and enforcement if needed, right? So that has been a very good approach, a model for countries that are looking to promote, in-house, in-country invention, innovation, entrepreneurship, so that you can experiment, you can innovate, you can build something that works for you, for your people, and then have the regulation and compliance, the sort of that part of it comes second, because you need to give it time. You need to allow for, we call them sandboxes, but essentially they're like, and all of these smaller countries that I had mentioned that are now excelling, and their economies are booming because of these innovations, like Estonia, Singapore, UAE, Switzerland, is because of they've allowed for these sandboxes, which essentially is It's an American term. It's an English, but essentially it means like, you can experiment your innovation in that in a safe space, so that you can see how it would work as you scale it and grow it. How the impacts would be to businesses, to society. And then you don't have to face like the repercussions of something going wrong, and then you're going to be sanctioned, or you're going to be fined, and then that would essentially, if you're a startup, if you're a small company, you would essentially be regulated out of existence. So this sandbox gives you that opportunity to experiment and grow and build your product and innovation. So that has been another, I would say, a renewed focus, a renewed push for that. There's been a number of also like legal, I would say legislative changes as well, to allow for, let's say, stable coins to flourish and proliferate. And so we have a number of laws and regulations that have sort of accomplished that, from the Genius Act to the Clarity Act. I mean, we have a number of these, but all you need to know about them is essentially it's that innovation first mentality, regulation enforcement second.
I see.
Yeah.
So do you see a US sort of issued CBDC coming into existence
I don't
anytime soon?
Yeah. So the U.S. So when we talk about CBDC, so that's the central bank digital currency. I've been operating in this space since the early days of Bitcoin, and so what I have not seen yet is I see a lot of governments, a lot meaning many, meaning some, right? Some governments exploring this adoption of a central bank digital currency. But I haven't seen really much success from it,
I see.
or as like has it accomplished what it's set out to do. So whether it's in trade finance, whether it's in promoting cross-border payments, whether it's promoting trade, whether it's promoting investment, I haven't really seen an example of one where I could point to and say they did it like perfect, or they did it well and it's working, right? So you have a lot of countries who've experimented in it, but they haven't really benefited from it. So looking at it from that perspective, I'm not a proponent currently, in the current sort of, again, a lot of these technologies, they're evolving at rapid speeds. Could there be a version of the CBDC that I could get behind in the future? Perhaps.
I see.
But currently, at its current state today, I really can't. But what I do see the potential of is, and that is working, is stablecoins. And essentially, stablecoin, in a way, is a central bank. It is a digital dollar, let's say in the States, right? So we have our currency, our fiat, what we use is called the dollar. It's a digital dollar, essentially. It's one-to-one. It's backed by, the government. It's backed by so that accomplishes what its objective is set out to do.
Yes.
So I don't really see a need for CBDC at the moment.
I see. And the examples you mentioned of where CBDCs have not accomplished what they set out for.
Yeah.
Like what is the number one reason why a central bank issued digital currency fails? Is it the fact that the bureaucracy that gives birth to this inhibits its growth? Because if you look at any other stable coins, say
which stable coins have gone, I wish I had those figures with me, but I would say, that's a great question. Like, what has happened?
Like 1.5 trillion estimated.
Trillions in transaction volume. It's just the growth of it has been just exponential, right? So, but when you think about CBDCs, there's the Chinese model that they sort of had, which was a digital yuan, and you don't really hear a lot about it. You don't hear like what it was intended to do was perhaps position the yuan as sort of a more of a global currency.
Yes.
Um, but like, once again, you don't need a central bank like to accomplish that. If you look at Tunisia, Tunisia is another very small country.
Mm.
They were one of the first countries to actually adopt a digital currency, their own, digital currency. But where did it? What happened?
Yeah.
Where did it go? It was, I think more. It was more about the hype around it that got countries kind of interested in doing it. But there's a lot of privacy concerns with it. There's a lot of, I would say, the way that currently it's being proposed, the current structure of it, I think has sort of, privacy advocates, I would say, businesses kind of wary about kind of the information, the data, where is it going, who's using it, who has access to it, and also from like an implementation standpoint, it gets very uh, it could be very onerous and very burdensome. So again, I haven't seen like a great example of one,
I
but
see.
who's to say that there couldn't be one,
I
that
see.
yeah.
So let's move away from stable coins to
Yeah.
another hype of the day, which is artificial intelligence. You were working at ServiceNow,
Yeah.
right? And in your experience in AI enterprise, right? So how do you see AI, shaping digital finance?
So I've been working also in AI for the same amount of years that I've been working in digital assets, probably more so. Actually, that probably more. People think AI is new. They think it's new because you now are you're seeing it out in the open. It's consumer, it's customer, it's people facing, right? You have all these new what we call LLMs, large language models. OpenAI, ChatGPT, etc. China's DeepSeek. You have all these models that are coming to the market, and people are using them. They're interacting with them. So we think they're new, but they're not new.
Yeah.
Banks, we're on the topic of digital finance. Financial institutions, banks have been using AI for over 20 years, more in fact. You just didn't know, but like when you use your let's say credit card or bank information, you're making a purchase, let's say, and then all of a sudden you see on your statement that there's some purchase or something from South Africa, but you've never been there. They use AI to reverse those fraudulent transactions on your card. So you as a customer are benefiting from AI in fraud prevention, in security, in identification, to identify who you are when you call into your account or when you access your account. So in that respects, AI is like hand in glove
I see.
with finance, with digital finance. Um, and also another thing about AI is it's led to more I would say financial advice, guidance, right? So you can now get more customized, personalized information and advice about your finances through AI. And they look at your spending habits, they look at your savings habits, they look at your investing habits, and then they propose to you based on an algorithm that, oh, you really like these sort of technology stocks, you really like whatever, you should then consider investing in these, or you should consider so these are all positive um, tools for consumers that I think has shown that it's not really hype anymore. It's actually part of our daily lives. But what we do need, and kind of what I've emphasized this at Bhutan Echoes, is, we need that governance. We need those guardrails in place, because just because private industry can build something doesn't mean that they should. And there needs to be protections in place that, allow for that responsible, responsible AI to proliferate and yeah, I mean, I think we would want that, right? We want to make sure that um, whatever technology we're using, we're also kind of protected from it, any kind of adverse, negative,
I see.
you know. Wow.
So with as you were mentioning, the integration of AI into the integration of AI into the existing, systems, does it present an opportunity for countries like Bhutan
Yeah.
to use AI to leapfrog traditional financial systems? And what are some of the use cases you can think of?
I also love that question because
Yes.
I think it's exactly that. I do think like these technologies, they serve a purpose. They serve, they should be serving us. They should be serving the people. And I think one aspect of how they're being able to serve is they're able to help countries leapfrog and nations and communities leapfrog from what others have had to endure and go through the expense and go through the
Mm.
bureaucracy and all of that and be able to leapfrog ahead. And there's many examples of this, but I think you've named one as well in terms of your domestic payment
Yes.
system. Be able to leapfrog from COVID to now and promote and encourage people to use. You know, a lot of people have smartphones today. Smartphones are going to be the mechanism by which you can advance these sort of smart payments.
Mm.
And so that's one example of where you're able to leapfrog already.
Yeah.
Another one is like the payment system could be, whereas traditionally, let's say it takes maybe 48 hours, 72 hours to settle, clear a
Yes.
payment, a transaction. Now, with these newer innovations, these newer apps that you
Yes.
can use, you could settle and clear within minutes, within
Yes.
seconds. So I would say it does take, um, it does require a bit of vision and leadership and sort of from the community, from government to be able to basically translate this into a policy that then can help the
Mm.
leapfrog and so yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
So let's move to looking at the broader digital assets, right? So
Yeah.
when many people talk about digital assets, cryptocurrencies, dominate the
Yeah.
discussion. But for policymakers to better understand the broader digital ecosystem, if you could shed some light on digital assets at large, given
Yeah.
your experience.
Yeah. So digital assets are essentially that. They're assets, whether they're real world assets, so say like, uh, property, real estate, and they're also assets like gold, right? So like, and other commodities. And there are other physical assets as well. So we're the physical, and you basically digitize them and you place them on a blockchain or something adjacent to a blockchain. But
Mm.
essentially, and what a blockchain essentially is a
Yes.
record, is a shared ledger, whatever you want, however you want to describe it. But it's a means to which you can record those what was physical to digital, and then be able to transact,
Yes.
settle, do with that through this means. So with that, you're going to have tokenization.
Yes.
That's another new, something that didn't exist until a few years ago, which now allows for individuals, businesses, governments to take ownership in an asset that they never could either afford
Yeah.
themselves because it's like a fractional ownership. So you can now invest in a property, let's say a huge property that would cost too much money, like nobody could afford it, but you can now own like a 0.01% of it,
Yeah.
which might sound small, but if that investment grows and which it will, then
Yes.
that 0.01% will translate to more savings, more investment for you. So you have more opportunities. It really has opened the door to opportunities, and we're only now seeing like the effects of it. Tokenization is going to, by some estimates, be over $40 trillion by 2030, if not more. And we're seeing a lot of institution like traditional mainstream institutions investing in it,
Yeah.
and banks investing in it, governments investing in it. We talked about stable coins already, but those are one other
Type of.
type of digital assets. There's obviously cryptocurrencies as well, Bitcoin, and the thousands of other cryptocurrencies that exist out there. Somebody had asked me how difficult is it to create like a
New
Bitcoin
crypto.
or new crypto, and
Yeah.
I'm like, it is really not.
Yeah.
I created one
What's
just
it
for the
called?
fun of it.
What
Just
is
for
it
the
called?
fun of it. It was called Coity Coin. Again, there's no reason or rhyme to it. It was an experiment to see if I could create it. This was back before AI. AI now probably can help you create a lot of these newer,
Yes.
not probably can.
Can.
They will. But again, it's not gonna, unless there's adoption and whatnot. So, yeah, I'm sure there's others again, but I would say like, um, this space is just like growing so fast that you just don't want to be left behind. So I think the more you can read about it, the more you can do research, the more you can invest, explore, innovate. I think the better. Who knows? You could come up with one that,
Yes.
will, yeah.
So many believe that tokenization, right,
Yeah.
is will become a much bigger space than cryptocurrencies themselves, right?
Oh.
Do you believe that?
It's possible because when you think about it, cryptocurrencies are limited by design
Yes.
in how much how much they're created, whether they're mined, right? So Bitcoin, what is it, 21 million?
Yes.
But but tokenization,
It's
there's
real.
no limit, and it's all real world assets, all. So I could believe that. I mean, I haven't really thought about it in that sense, but I could
Yeah.
believe that.
Yeah.
I
So
can see that.
with tokenization, right? What you were saying earlier about artificial intelligence, how it has been around for so long, but it was just not in the public sphere yet, right?
Yeah.
Space yet. So
Yeah.
so many did not know about it.
No.
I'm a gamer, so tokenization has existed for me digital assets. Identifying
Yeah.
and engaging in digital assets has existed for me for a long time, right? And people are saying, oh, it's not the same because you're not tokenizing anything, real, but we are tokenizing, community engagement. We're tokenizing creativity. So
Yes.
when you buy a digital sort of asset in a game, for example,
Yes.
right, that can be then used in that particular game. The only challenge was it was not, how should I put it, unique, right? You could create infinite copies of it.
Correct.
But now with the technologies at hand, the limited nature of it, right? Depending on how many, for example, let's look at, for example, this new game that's highly anticipated, GTA 6, right? Many are claiming that there will be elements of tokenization and crypto, and I'm looking at it as from a sort of a case study perspective,
Yeah.
as to they spend more money making that game than I think they spent on Burj Khalifa. So I'm presuming that game would be a beautiful sandbox and a great case study, but if tokenization has such immense potential, already shown, what are some of the regulatory challenges, right, globally,
Yeah.
and in the US that you
Yeah.
can think of, that need to be resolved before this particular technology becomes, mainstream?
Yeah. So I love that you mentioned Burj Khalifa because I love that building. Every time I go to UAE, I try to visit. It's the tallest building in the world. It's in Dubai, and it really showcases human ingenuity. You know, how they were able to build that building in that few years is nothing short of remarkable, and required a lot of capital, required a lot of investment, and it required a vision. So in this sense, for tokenization, yes, the challenges beyond the regulatory challenges are requires capital, requires investment,
I see.
requires a vision. It requires you know a more I guess more in the sort of public discourse in the public domain. So you're talking about e-gaming, for instance, or um, that's another area where I could see crypto digital assets become I wouldn't say mainstream, but help propel digital assets a little bit more into the mainstream everyday kind of discourse the way
No.
that these LLMs have done that for AI. So I can absolutely see that. What needs to change? I mean, I think I think it requires also a little bit of the infrastructure needs to be there. It sounds easy. Well, we're just going to tokenize it. But who's going to hold the tokens?
I see.
How are they held? Um, you know, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of considerations that require a beyond policy and regulation, just the actual physical, the mechanics of it. You know.
I see. So, great perspective, right? So does it make sense then for countries, right, that when they're looking at their entire developmental journey to allocate resources for say tokenization, would such a risk be worth it? So let's look at Bhutan, for example.
Yeah.
Our energy sector is heavily dominated by hydropower electricity,
yeah.
right? So does it make sense for us to then divert that energy, right? Because energy would be required for this physical infrastructure that you're talking about.
No.
Does it make sense for us to take a bet that tokenization, and would that bet be worth the upside? A,
Yeah.
and B, the second part of the question is, um, uh, you know, uh, the and does it make sort of like an ethical sense, right, to divert energy to something so new and novel, right, when there are real life problems at
Problems,
hand
yeah.
that need to be solved, such as simple as access to electricity in
Yeah.
remote villages.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say to that, yeah. I mean, in terms of like, I wouldn't say maybe divert, but like these are energy intensive.
Yes.
These are energy intensive industries. Now, what you have again going for you is hydropower. You have even more,
Untapped potential.
yeah, untapped potential. And I think there's a way to do it that balances the need for investment, innovation, that part, with also making sure that communities have continuous access to electricity.
Yeah.
This is going to connectivity.
Yeah.
That's another one as well. These innovations, digital assets, all of this digital finance. The word digital requires connectivity, requires electricity.
Yeah.
So, but I would say, I would counter what you said by saying that if I invest in new industries that might be more energy intensive, but if I get more of a return from those and be able to use that return to then invest in those communities and upgrade the electrical grid in the country and make it and make it really more of a smart grid, you could do both. And in
Yeah.
fact, a lot of something else that we haven't really talked about, but we're talking about blockchain as sort of the underlying sort of the technology behind
Settlement layer.
settlement layer. But another aspect of blockchain that is ripe for a country like Bhutan is that sort of the smart applications, the smart contracts, the utilization of blockchain based systems for electrical grids, so that and this is a problem frankly everywhere. A lot of people have countries, from developed to underdeveloped, have pockets in their country where the energy grid, the electrical grid, is not reliable. And you can use modern day technology to leapfrog, right? We talk about leapfrog, to leapfrog from having to do what was needed prior in, years before, to actually anticipate using AI, using blockchain, anticipate when there's going to be a need for more energy, more electricity. So these, let's say, blackouts, or instances where the energy is being highly utilized, it can be transferred, shifted to regions where at that time, where here was more energy use is needed during these times, over here they're not. And so it's like a historical pattern. So it could optimize your electrical grid. It can optimize, and then frankly, for those who can afford to pay more, it can also incentivize, let's say, a regime that would allow for, like, let's say you have something, let's say solar, you have maybe some other sort of renewable. I would imagine in Bhutan you might, because
Yes.
you're net zero, you're actually negative, you're
Yes.
not, so you could really how should I say, incentivize a structure that would allow you to, let's say, for people in those communities who have these, let's say, renewables, to sell back their excess, whatever they produce, back into the electrical grid, or back
Yeah.
into the, so in a way you could structure it to, like, to make it, to align it to the values of, of Bhutan, of the government, of the people, and be and still be a leader in the world when it comes to energy usage, and
Yeah.
you know
Yes, when it comes to what you were saying, some of the challenges infrastructure-wise, right?
Yeah.
The electric grid, for example, the
Yeah.
need to upgrade it. I mean, I was reading a case study a couple of days ago about how electrical grid systems in the Western sphere, right, in the U.S. and Europe, haven't been upgraded for but decades, and now they're realizing, oh, the energy consumption is going to be so high with
data centers,
data centers,
yeah.
AI data centers,
Yeah.
that now they're looking at this infrastructure.
Yeah.
But there's also the challenge of mindset, right?
Yeah.
So I always think about why gaming, for example, has not adopted, cryptocurrencies and digital assets as quickly as it should have, or as lovingly as it should have, because it sounds like a marriage made in heaven, right? We are
Yeah.
used to buying digital assets, that could be infinitely, reproduced, but now you have, there's a value. It can become a store of value.
Absolutely.
Right? But and so I was talking to some game developers, asking them this question, right? Why hasn't this union been successful? And one answer in particular piqued my interest. Was he said, "Oh, we game developers, we just want to create games. We don't want to be banks. And we don't want that responsibility, the responsibility
responsibility,
that comes
yeah,
with
that's right.
integrate." So that's there as well. So I would like to use this now as an opportunity to then segue into my next question, which is, there's so many young people here, right? So we talked about the broader digital assets, changes that are happening in digital finance. What can a young Bhutanese entrepreneur in the audience right now, or listening to it from their home, do, right, in this space,
Yeah.
right, that can be launched easily,
Yeah.
right? The barrier to entry is as minimal as possible, to then contribute and become part of this, so that, like you said, we don't miss the train. Like, what
Yeah.
are some of the areas that we could,
Yeah.
create services for, and
Yeah.
maybe even for ServiceNow? Like, is there anything an entrepreneur here could then create, to address a pain point that a AI enterprise,
Yeah.
such as
So,
ServiceNow,
like,
faces?
I like that question. Yeah, for us, so, like, for ServiceNow, for our company, we're a software, we're a workflow company, right? So you think of, like, financial system, you think of payments, you think of HR, hiring, so any kind of workflow, we provide a software platform that would allow you to achieve those workflows but also embedding AI, embedding cybersecurity as well, because
Mm.
those workflows, as they become digital, they touch multiple devices, they touch
Mm.
multiple people.
Yes.
So IT, IoT, OT, like all these sort of devices, and you need to have a cybersecurity control over it, or like a control tower. So that's kind of where our company comes in. We provide both the workflows and the software and the AI, but we also provide the cybersecurity to be able to patch any kind of vulnerability in your system.
Mm.
So that's our company. That's what we do. I think in terms of the young people in the audience, um, the the one advice I would give is do what makes you happy. You know, then it wouldn't be considered like a job. It's actually like a passion, and that's the best. You know, I think if you love gaming, you know, if you love you know, let's say esports, you know, any kind of electronic, you know, there are things that you can do to um, make the, let's say, the experience, the customer experience better. You should kind of look into that, because that's a huge money making potential right there. Is anything you could do to kind of promote, enhance the
Mm.
the consumer experience, right? So AI, it took many years for somebody, for like a Sam Altman to come by and basically think about, how do I make what we know, what already exists, by the way,
Mm.
how do I make this something that anybody can use and actually benefit from, you know? So how do I make this technology use benefit? So, and he created this, you know? Um, so think about it in that terms. Like, how can you take what is that potentially exists today, not something that doesn't exist, but that exists today, but improving the customer, the person experience, you know, with
Mm.
it. That's, I think, like the best use case of
Mm.
these technologies, because think about it, there are billions of people on the planet.
Mm.
So if your application, your app, you know, connects, you know, does that. Look at Facebook. Look at all these inventions. Like, it's all the ones that are successful, the ones that are most people facing.
Yes.
You know, you can become an enterprise company and create like a business to business, but you're not going to be as profitable and
Yes.
as, you know, as versus like, you know, application that really um, touches people and improves their lives.
Yes. So before we sort of open up for questions from the
Yeah.
audience, you know, the closing question: if you were given the ability, the opportunity to redesign Bhutan's financial ecosystem, right, system from scratch today,
Mm.
like what would be some of the principles that you would embed in this system?
Yeah. I would never do something from scratch. I would use what exists,
Mm.
and I would want to make improvements, right? So I think, you know, the more that I can improve the usage, the accessibility of payments to everyone, so that everyone can have access to payments, I would focus on that. I would focus on, you talked about financial
Inclusion.
inclusion.
Yeah.
You know, we call it economic inclusion, financial inclusion, but essentially it's you know, increasing the number of people who are have access to a safe,
Mm.
affordable, convenient
Yes.
financial product and service. So that would be a priority. I would make that an overall priority.
Mm.
And then in terms of a innovation first, you know, what we talked about in terms of a regulatory policy structure, you know, to encourage uh, talent to remain here in Bhutan and build and create and benefit from these financial innovations. So promoting a open regulatory framework that allows for people to sandbox, experiment, kind of like what we talked about. And yeah, just more, I would say, encouraging more awareness and more investment in these startups in the
Mm.
country. So, is there a um, whether it's a government agency or a public-private kind of partnership that promotes the development of more startups
Yeah.
in this financial in this ecosystem, in the crypto space and digital asset space. I mean, not all countries have done that, and I think you can. I think GMC is a good example of where you could have to encourage more startups to locate there and build and create their financial innovations. You can kind of promote this sort of public-private partnership model where we will invest, we will match.
We do have a stable coin from GMC
Ah,
called
Tether,
which is
exactly.
gold backed, right?
Exactly.
What's your sort of thoughts on that?
No, I love it. I
Yeah.
think, no, exactly. I talked about it.
It's
yesterday.
gold backed, not dollar backed.
No, and exactly. It's backed by something tangible,
Yes.
something that has value. So that value gives this value because a digital, a digital version of something that doesn't have value means it's not going to have value.
Yes.
So absolutely makes perfect sense. No, it's great. Yeah.
Great. So let's ask the audience if they have any questions for our speaker, guest speaker. Yes, please. Oh, sorry. I need to pass the mic. Sorry. Yes. The mic is for the audience, so that they can get clear audio.
I need to go closer. No, you can just
Speak in.
nobody hear. Oh, okay. So my question is regarding the Clarity Act. I believe you touched a bit upon it. So we're seeing most likely the Clarity Act is not going to get passed in the most recent Senate session. We've seen the issue start with stablecoin reward distribution. Now it's moved on to the ethics provision. So, firstly, I'd like to ask you, being seeing things actually on the ground level, what are your expectations about how the ethics provision is going to progress? Secondly, is beyond the ethics provision, what is another provision that you would see causing the Clarity Act to solve further? And finally, what's the timeline you expect until the Clarity Act is officially
Implemented.
yes,
Yeah.
because I think the market is pricing in about a 31% odd that it's not going to get passed in 2026 at all. Yeah, thank you.
So that's an excellent question. Can I just say how, again, impressed I am that you know about the Clarity Act and that you know about the Senate provisions. I think that's another example of my just incredible appreciation for how brilliant I think everybody that I've interacted with so far here in Bhutan is, really, truly. I would say, there's politics with everything, right? It comes down to sort of, I know there's a bit of debate on the sort of ethics provisions, and then also in terms of kind of when it would be, we obviously have midterms coming up, and all of this elections, and this is the beauty and nature of democracy, any democracy. So if let's say this version doesn't pass, could there be some other version in the future, and the next year or so past, be introduced by another member? Though I would say what has been really critical in the adoption and promotion of fintech and digital assets has been it's not been seen as a sort of a dividing issue, but it's been there's in the U.S. we have Democrats, Republicans, but it's actually supported, embraced by both. But there's pockets somewhat more, as you brought up, one of the provisions they want more language to sort of protect, and then others want sort of more let's say business friendly, or but I think at the end of the day, you're going to see cooler heads coming together, and they're going to find a way to pass some version of this to ensure that, like we said, we need innovation for to promote the economy, to promote entrepreneurship, to really create a better future for our kids and our families and our communities. So let's find a way to work together and be able to build that framework that really accomplishes what it's set out to do. You know what it's meant to do, and if that requires, that something it requires another year, then so be it. But that's the way I see it. Yeah.
Another question.
Good afternoon. So, as we are all aware, Bhutan is a country rich in carbon, and we are also aware that carbon credits can be tokenized as digital assets. And in regards to your expertise, my question is that beyond simply tokenizing carbon credits, how would you design a blockchain ecosystem where verified carbon credits become programmable digital assets that can be traded, financed, collateralized, or integrated into decentralized finance, while remaining compliant with the carbon market regulations? Thank
Yeah.
you.
I love that question for a number of reasons. One, I had the opportunity to work on the voluntary carbon credit market in Saudi Arabia. So they were one of the first ones, the first movers in this space, and they actually leveraged a blockchain based system to do it. I would definitely encourage you to look at that model as a structure, as a framework for what Bhutan could do. Um, and certainly there's some improvements that I would make based on Bhutan's own values and its own sort of, what its needs are. But yeah, carbon credits is another great example, a great use case of tokenization, of financial innovation, and you're going to see, I think, a lot of countries also be very interested in kind of how Bhutan um, how Bhutan does this for their own sort of their own sort of markets. But I think that's a great example of one that I would put together a policy up at the from the highest levels of the government. I would encourage the investments to be made, the infrastructure upgrades to be made to make it achievable, because you will see there's a lot of money and investment in that space.
We have another question.
Funny microphone. Right. Three parts, if I may.
Yes.
First question: is it possible that the development of digital currency will be a threat to the position of the dollar as the world reserve currency? Point number one. Point number two: tokenization. What is the difference between tokenization and the concept of shares and stocks in a big company? Third element: some people working on a project in Bhutan today promote the idea of having, for example, and I quote their documents, love tokens and faith tokens, and even tokenizing gross national happiness. Are they going a step too far? And if that sort of thing happens, the tokenization of behavior, is that not a very, very dangerous development whereby people's attitudes and behaviors may, by the government, be limiting what they can do, say, or live in?
So let me answer the first question. I'll answer all three. In terms of the potential threat, in terms of digital assets, these sort of digital currencies to the supremacy of the U.S. dollar. I think so. On that question, we were talking about stable coins before. It has actually done the opposite, in the sense that it has promoted more adoption of the U.S. dollar than had it not been for stable coins. In fact, over 90%, I think it's even 97% as high, stable coins are issued in US dollars. And it's because of the fact that the regulatory regime in the United States has openly embraced stablecoins, and you have legislation that has been passed, and you have banks that have now been issuing stablecoins, which essentially are, we refer to them as digital dollars. So I don't see a threat to the U.S. dollar from digital assets or digital currency yet. I see it actually propping, and frankly, I wouldn't even see it as a threat to any nation's fiat currency, because I think it promotes more use of that nation's fiat currency. Because at the end of the day, it has to be tied to a thing of value. You know, whether if we're talking about stable coins, it's tied to the dollar. Whether we're talking about the TER, it's tied to the gold.
Yes.
You know, and so I don't see it yet being that, but certainly, I mean, anything is possible in the realm of, you know, in this sort of space. But I don't see, the evidence doesn't support that yet, I would say. Second, I think maybe I forgot it. Second, because I'm thinking of the third question.
Tokenization.
Oh, token in the stock market. Stocks is another an excellent question. In a way, they sound pretty similar, right? It's tokenization. Now, take the definition of it in terms of digitizing it, making it, you know, be able to settle and trade and put it on the blockchain. That's obviously different than the stock market and stock. So that's the difference. But what the similarity is, that fractional ownership. You can actually you can create an opportunity for an individual investor to invest in something which they never could have invested in before, because they didn't have the capital to, you know. So in that respect, they're similar, I think. In terms of your last question, remind me again. It was the
Once we get to a situation as is being
Oh,
suggested
love to-
by
yeah, the
some
love tokens,
consultants in Bhutan
Yeah.
today, not in the future, but
Yeah.
now. Once we get into the situation of tokenizing attitudes and behavior, for example, faith tokens, where you would be awarded a faith token depending how often you go to the temple, you would be given a love token on the basis of how kind you were to your neighbor. It all sounds beautiful, but is this not very similar to the attempt that was made in China some years ago to actually put value on your social behavior? And
Social
once that
scoring.
happens,
Oh, yes.
the government controls you totally. Is
Yes.
that not a big danger?
Yes. So I would say my expertise kind of just falls within sort of the fintech realm and the fintech space. But I find your question pretty fascinating. I mean, I would say, you know, and to the social sort of scoring, these kinds of, you know, which I am as an individual. Again, I'm here in my own capacity, not as representing my company or
Yes.
my government, but you know, I'm against any and all. I would say those kinds of systems that are, you know, that social sort of scoring that the Chinese system has promoted and still adopts, by the way, and how it's very much tied to your finances and just more. You know, I'm more of a I believe there should be more like privacy by design in these technologies and these systems. But I mean, you know, you mentioned faith tokens and love tokens. I mean, I'm also not sure if those are necessarily you know, I would say the same as what we're kind of referring to as sort of in the tokenizing sort of assets,
Physical
right?
assets.
Physical assets. So, but it's
So
interesting.
I do hope while you're in Bhutan, you make your view known
Ah.
on this issue.
I will, I absolutely will. And I think look, it's important for all of us that are interested in this space, that are working in this space, to you know, kind of share our
Yes.
knowledge and kind of our experience. You know, I've been asked, you know, about CBDCs, you know, the central bank digital currencies. I've been asked about many things that I haven't seen proven to work, and so I am very as you can see, I'll share my opinions on what I believe.
Great. So that was the last question from the audience. We're going to have a group discussion after this. So perhaps you can ask them. Great session. Thank you so much for making it for this particular Bhutan Dialogues session. Like I said, we have young people in the audience, so right after this, we can have a discussion, interaction with them. We also have a representative from the Guild for Mindfulness City who would be sharing about the digital finance ecosystem with the audience, and we could have that interactive discussion. I'd also like to highlight, the increasing collaboration, led by Ambassador Sergio Cor, for especially supporting young, Bhutanese in the realm of technology.
Yeah.
Right. So I hope this would be the start of many sort of engagements, especially in this. And the U.S. Embassy has, I think now this is the second expert, if I'm not third expert that we have had. I had the good fortune of interviewing the first, I believe, and I hope this would be, one of the many sort of like spaces that we can co-create to jointly promote cooperation, not only in the digital finance space.
Absolutely.
And you promised that you'd be back very
I'll be back.
soon.
Be back very
so hopefully you'll be back with a lot of friends, and
will.
we'll create something interesting together. So thank you so much for the session and for everyone watching. This is going to be on the Loden Foundation's Facebook page, all the social networking sites, so people can, maybe if they ask questions in comment sections, we will divert them to you.
Absolutely.
So that we can then
100%.
continue the engagement. Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.